Hi everyone. Today we're going to be demonstrating the geocoding capabilities found within Simple GIS. So to begin with, I've created a new project in my Simple GIS client application. In this particular project, I based off the USGS Topo project template. And you see I just have a single layer loaded, which is the USGS Topo WMS service. In this first demonstration, we'll cover if you have no data and you just want to create a quick and dirty geocode database to allow you to locate addresses from customers or other data points. This particular wizard is found under the geocoding menu and the last entry, the Build Geocode DB wizard. To begin with, when you select this menu option, you'll be presented with a new dialog box, and you'll need to select a file name for your new geocode database. In this case, when I click the Open Folder button, I see that I already have an existing geocode database that in my case I'm just going to simply overwrite. But you can select a folder location in entering a new file name for your geocode database, or like I said in my demo here, I'm just going to overwrite this existing geocode database. So now that I have that set, I can select the state or states that I want to use to build my geocode database from. I can simply click and drag to select multiple states, or I could click and use my control key and click again to make multiple selections under the states or counties. In this particular example, I'm just going to select a single state, Indiana, and again under the counties, although I could select multiple counties as I could with the states, I'm going to select a single county. And so what Simple GIS will do is it'll reach out to the U.S. Census Bureau for the states and counties selected and actually grab the Tiger file line data for those counties to build the geocode database from. So in a minute, as I click the apply, we'll see that it'll actually begin to download this Tiger file line data. The other option I have is whether I want the geocode to contain city-state information or with zip code. So by default, the Tiger file line data address information is encoded with a zip code. And so that is what comes with the Tiger file line data. But Simple GIS can actually take that zip code and translate it to city and state information if you prefer to geocode with the city-state information. And so what that means is as you enter your addresses, you could enter it with a city and state or with a zip code. So I'm going to use the city-state option, and as I click apply, you'll see a status appear at the bottom of your dialog box indicating that it is now downloading the Tiger file data, in this case for Allen County, and now it's processing that data, and you'll see a series of dialog boxes pop up indicating the status as it's building this geocode database. And so depending on how many counties you've selected and states, this can take anywhere from just a minute or two to several hours. When it's completed, you'll see that you'll get a confirmation asking, do you want your current project to use this new geocode database? And in our demo here, I'm going to select yes. And so now we've created the geocode database, and if I go to my address lookup edit box here, and I could come in and simply type in a street address in this edit box. As I type this, and when I complete, I'll hit the enter key, and you'll see that it locates that street address now on my map. So now we've created this geocode database, and we can use that to locate street addresses within this region that we created the database for, which in this case was a single county, so we only have the data for that one county. And again, this geocode database, this wizard, is based upon freely available Tiger file line data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Now, let's suppose that I had multiple addresses that I want to match. Maybe I have a spreadsheet or database of addresses for customers that I want to place or locate on a map. In this case, you see I've just pulled up a simple spreadsheet, and I just have a few addresses in here for, it could be customers, it could be just whatever kind of data that you're wanting to map, as long as it has a street address. And so I'm going to select all of the fields in my spreadsheet, and I'm going to simply go and I'm going to copy this data to the clipboard. And at this point in time, I'm going to go under my geocoding menu, and I'm going to select the batch geocode option. So in this dialog box, if I had a database table already built, I could simply connect to that database table, whether it would be a DBase table, or if it was in another database like Access or something, I connect to that. But since I'm doing spreadsheet data, I'm going to simply click on the Paste Data button. And what it's going to do is take the data I copied out of my spreadsheet to the clipboard, and it's going to create a DBase table from that data. So it's asking me to select a folder location and file name for this DBase table. And I have one that I created earlier that I'm just going to overwrite again. So in this case, I'm just going to select the file and I'm going to overwrite the existing file. And of course, when I click that, it's going to confirm and ask me, does the data that I copied, does the first row contain field names? And if I actually look in my spreadsheet, I see that indeed the first row that I copied does represent the field names. And so I simply confirm that yes, it does. And then based upon the folder that I'm looking in, it would show all of the data tables available under that folder in this list box here, which in this case I only have a single data table. So if I was to click that data table, it would show all the available fields in this table here in this list box. And now I need to tell it which fields contains the address information. So in this case, I have a single field that contains the entire street address. But in some cases, I may have the street address parsed out into multiple fields. So I could have the address number in a single field, the street name in a single field, or what have you. In this particular example, it's all contained in one field. So I would select that field, and using this button with the double arrows pointing to the right, I need to move this field into the address fields list box, which tells Simple GIS which fields contains the street address. So like I said, if this was parsed into multiple fields, I would need to add those fields in order over here that lets Simple GIS know what fields to use to build the address. And of course, if I make a mistake and I need to remove a field out of the address fields, I can simply select it and use the other button to remove the field. Now I also need to tell it which field contains my city name or my zip code or state information. In this case, I just have a city field, which I'll move over into this list box. And then I can also set a minimum match score for these addresses, which indicates the minimum score to be considered a match for that address. So you can specify a different value here if you wish. In this case, I'm saying that the address in my table, I need a 95% match to the geocode addresses in my database to consider it a valid match. And now what it's going to do is create a shapefile, so I have to give it a name for this new shapefile that I'm going to create. So again, I go and I'm going to locate a folder location that I want to store this new shapefile, and then I'm going to simply type in a name for my new shapefile, which in my case I'm just going to say my batch match. And so at this point, I simply click OK. It has processed those addresses and asked, do I want to add that to my view? I'm going to say yes. And now I see I have a new layer in my table of contents in my map. And as I zoom out, I see I actually have these new points from this shapefile on my map. And if I use my view feature attribute information, I can actually see in that shapefile it contains the name of the customer or data that I'm mapping, the street address, city, and the lat long for that address. So what it found is a match. If it didn't find a match for the address in your data for whatever reason, it would still show in your shapefiles attribute table, but the lat and long would be set to 0 in that case if it was unable to find a match for that address in your geocode database. So in this case, it found a match for all 3 addresses I had, as I can see here on my map. So this is a really easy way. Like I said, if you don't have your own data, you just want to create a quick and dirty geocode database using the Tiger file data from the U.S. Census Bureau, this is certainly an easy way to do that. Now, you could just as well, if you did have your own data, or if you wanted to combine Tiger file data with some other data you might have, you could do that as well. So I'm going to go now, I'm going to add a new shapefile that I have, which is simply town point data. And I'm going to add this layer, and I'm going to change my symbol size, make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to label the name for the town so we can see that. And it says, yes, I do want to turn auto labeling on. It's currently turned off. And I've added that layer to my map. And now I see I have 2 new points here for 2 towns here near Fort Wayne, for Huntertown here to the north and New Haven to the east. So let's say I wanted to create a new geocode database that combines data from multiple data sources. I could do that as well. It's a little more involved, but it's still fairly easy to do. So I'm going to go back to my geocoding menu, and in this case I'm not going to use the Geocode DB wizard, but I'm going to go to the Build Geocode DB menu option. And if I click this menu option, you're going to see a new dialog box pop up. And in this case, it has actually loaded a configuration that I had used previously. I'm going to dismiss box out and figure so you can see how I created this from scratch actually. So let me just dismiss this dialog box, and I'm going to bring up Windows Explorer. And I had just deleted, I'm going to delete my geocode database out of my configuration box here that it's using. Now I'm going to bring up Windows Explorer, and I'm going to delete this configuration file right here. So ordinarily you wouldn't have to fool with this, but because I had run through this previously, and I want to show you how I created this from scratch, I'm just deleting those old files. So now I'm going to go back to my geocoding menu. I'm going to select Build Geocode DB, and now I see the dialog box comes up, and it's now empty. It has no rows in it. So to begin with, I'm going to go down below this grid, and I'm going to click the plus button to insert a new data source. And so I had actually downloaded the Tiger file data manually from the U.S. Census Bureau for this county, and so I'm just going to go and select that Tiger file data. So I need to click here, locate the folder. So I went to my public documents, and I had downloaded this to a Tiger data folder previously. So it's this TL 2017 edges shapefile. And this is, like I said, I had downloaded this straight from the U.S. Census Bureau previously. And now I need to specify the fields that contains the address information in this Tiger file data. So in this case, the Tiger file data has a L from ADD field, which represents the address number for addresses on the left-hand side of the street, and it has a from address and a to address for each side of the street. So for each street segment, it has a starting address and an ending address for the left-hand side of the street, and same thing for the right-hand side of the street. So I'll select the appropriate fields. And then also the field that contains the street name information, which in this case is the field full name in the Tiger file data. And the Tiger file data natively has zip code data, not the city name. So like I said, when we used the wizard a while ago, Simple GIS would take the zip code information and translate that to the city and state information. But if I'm using the native Tiger file data and building this geocode database from scratch, I actually have to use the zip code information. And so it actually has a zip code for the left-hand side of the street, just in case the street splits a zip code. And it has one for the right-hand side of the street as well. So in this case, I need to specify each of these. So this is for the Tiger file data, zip L and zip R respectively. The other option I could specify in this building the geocode database is a weight for each data source. So if I have multiple data sources and I feel that one data source is more accurate than the other, I could specify a weight that would be applied to the score for any matches found in that data set. So it's a way to weight multiple data sources to kind of indicate a preference for your match information in your geocode database. For this example, I'm not going to change the weight, leave it as it is. But now I'm going to go and insert a new data source, which was the town shapefile that I just added. So in this case, this is just a point shapefile. And as I add new data sources, the fields, it defaults to the previous entry. But in this case, for my town's point shapefile, I don't have these fields. In fact, I don't have any address information at all. It is just a point shapefile indicating town locations. So I'm going to delete these fields out for the left from address and left to, and same thing for right from and right to. And in the street address field name, I'm going to change this and put this to the field name, which is the actual town name in my point shapefile. And what this is going to enable me to do is in my geocoding database, when it's created, I can actually locate these towns by simply typing the town name in where I would normally type in a street address. And then I'm also delete the zip code left and zip code right. So you can imagine if I had a shapefile, let's say in this demo I'm showing towns, but if I had a point shapefile, let's say of customers that already had lat long locations associated to them, I could use that as well for my geocoding database. Now once again, when I click apply, I need to go and select the location for my geocode database that it wants to create. And again, I'm going to overwrite the one we had just created. And as I do that, I see that it progresses through and starts building the geocode database. And now if I just delete my graphics off the map, to go, and let's just take this same address I used earlier and hit enter to see if it would find it. All of a sudden I noticed that it would not locate that address. And the reason is, if you remember when we used the wizard, we geocoded by city name. And the geocode database we just built was by zip code. And so because it had that city name in it, it didn't recognize it. But if I just take that off and hit enter, it now finds that address again. But the other option I could do is, instead of just entering in a street address, because we had also geocoded our town point shapefile in the same database, if I was to come here and enter in a town name and hit enter, I now see that it would locate that point on the map as well. So you can imagine, in this demo I used town names, a point shapefile I had, but if I had let's say a point shapefile of customers that already had locations on a map for, or coordinates for, I could include that in my geocode, so if I wanted to locate a customer, I could simply come up to this same edit box, type that customer name in, and it would locate that customer on my map as well. So this kind of concludes the demo I planned for today. So you can kind of see the different geocoding options available to you in Simple GIS. And of course, if you'd like more information, just please visit our website at www.simplegissoftware.com. Thank you.